Hello and welcome to Pittsburgh City Council Standing Committees meeting for Wednesday, February 27th, 2019. My name is Kim Clark Baskin and I'm your Deputy City Clerk. With us today, we have our sign language interpreter, John Blasco. The following is a list of legislation up for preliminary approval by Pittsburgh City Council. Finance and Law Committee, Reverend Burgess is the chair. Bill number 2018-698. Ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title I, Administrative, Article 7, Procedures, Chapter 161, Contracts, to reflect current best practices in local government procurement. Bill number 1396. Resolution providing for the conveyance by the City of Pittsburgh of certain property having been placed for sale by adjoining property owners in conjunction with the City of Pittsburgh Side Yard Program. 2022 5th, 576 Blessing, 526 Lincoln, 6623 Shetland, 0 Hazelwood, 737 Industry, 321 Cedarhurst, and 0 California. Bill number 1397, resolution providing for the sale of certain property acquired by the City of Pittsburgh at tax sales. 504 Lowell, 506 Lowell, 6513, 6501, 6503, and 6507 Meadow. 6824 Fifth, 27 Tacumish, 5011 Little, 0 Letty Hill, 3821 Wilkesboro, 1617 Brownsville, and 0 Brownsville. Bill number 1398, resolution repealing items in resolutions approved on various dates which authorize the sale of property in various wards of the City of Pittsburgh due to an incompletion of sale. 515 Lowell and 17 Curtin. Bill number 1399, resolution providing for the filing of petitions for the sale of certain property acquired at tax sale to a City of Pittsburgh-based community development corporation for the purpose of advancing the interests of the community through redevelopment. 846 East Ohio and 302 West Burgess. Bill number 1401, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Safety to enter on behalf of the City of Pittsburgh into an agreement with the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators for training and certification purposes regarding public safety boat operations at a sum not to exceed $360,000 and providing for the payment of the cost thereof. Public Works Committee, Mrs. Kell Smith is the chair. Bill number 1405, resolution authorizing the transfer by the City of Pittsburgh to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania of certain public right-of-way, slope easement, and temporary construction easement rights in the 22nd Ward, City of Pittsburgh, to secure the right-of-way for the West Ohio Street Bridge construction project. Bill number 1406, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure of the City of Pittsburgh to apply for grant funding from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County, Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to construct streetscape updates to Walnut Street and Shadyside Neighborhoods Business District. Cost not to exceed $250,000 for this stated purpose. Bill number 1407, resolution vacating a portion of Spruce Way situated in the 6th Ward, 7th Council District of the City of Pittsburgh. Bill number 1408, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Works on behalf of the City of Pittsburgh to apply for grant funding from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to expand and redevelop Homewood Park. Cost not to exceed $250,000 for this stated purpose. Bill number 1409, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of Public Works of the City of Pittsburgh to apply for grant funding from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County's Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to renovate the Jefferson Recreation Center. Expenditures not to exceed $250,000 for this stated purpose. Bill number 1410, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of Public Works of the City of Pittsburgh to apply for grant funding from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to replace the Robert E. Williams Community Center. Expenditures not to exceed $250,000 for this stated purpose. Bill number 1411, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of Public Works of the City of Pittsburgh to apply for grant funding from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to renovate the Southside Park. Expenditures not to exceed $250,000 for this stated purpose. And Bill number 1412, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of Public Works of the City of Pittsburgh to apply for grant funding from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County's Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to renovate Stevens School in Council District 2. Expenditures not to exceed $250,000 for this stated purpose. Human Resources Committee, Mrs. Harris is the chair. Bill number 1400, resolution providing that the City of Pittsburgh enter into a professional services agreement and or contract with consultants and or service providers for professional services in connection with civil service and MPO ETC required assessment and evaluation of public safety candidates, cost not to exceed $160,000. Land Use and Economic Development Committee, Ms. Gross is the chair. Bill number 2018-1008, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title IX, Zoning, Article 1, Section 902.03, Zoning Map, by changing from R1AH, Residential Single Unit Attached, High Density District, to LNC, Local Neighborhood Commercial District. Roughly bounded by Larmer Avenue, Maxwell Way, Stobner Way, and Meadow Street, all in the Allegheny County Block and Lot System, 12th Ward, and this bill is sponsored by Reverend Burgess. Bill number 1415, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code, Title IX, Zoning, Article 1, Section 902.03, Zoning Map, and Article 3, Overlay Zoning Districts, Chapter 907, Development Overlay Districts, to establish a new interim planning overlay district for the Inclusionary Housing Interim Planning Overlay District. This bill is sponsored by Councilwoman Deb Gross. Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, Mr. O'Connor is the chair. Bill number 1395. Ordinance amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code, Title I, Administrative, Article 9, Boards, Commissions, and Authorities, Chapter 179A, Clean Pittsburgh Commission, and 179A.03, Meetings and Chair, subsection G, 179A.04, Powers and Duties of the Commission, subsection D, 179A.05, Reauthorization of the Commission, N179A.06, effective date, to update the purpose, meeting rules, membership, activities, and remove the requirement that the commission be reauthorized. Bill number 1402, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Office of Management and Budget to enter into a cooperation agreement with the Alliance for Infants and Toddlers for the shared operation and administration of the City of Pittsburgh Child Care Quality Fund for a period of 2 years, cost not to exceed $2 million, and for the payment of the cost thereof. Bill number 1403, resolution adopting plan revision to the City of Pittsburgh's official sewage facilities plan for UPMC Mercy Vision and Rehabilitation Hospital at UPMC Mercy, 1626 Locust Street. And Bill number 1404, resolution adopting plan revision to the City of Pittsburgh's official sewage facilities plan for proposed Grace Street residents at the intersection of Grace Street and Man Street, 15211. That concludes the reading of the legislation for preliminary approval. Thank you and have a great day.
Good morning and welcome to the regular standing committee meeting of City Council. This is actually our pre-agenda. We have an interview for appointment. I'm going to allow Madam Clerk to read the appointment, and then we'll wait for council members to come in. I'm chairing this meeting because I'm on the Alcosan board, and this is an appointment to the Alcosan board.
Bill 1382, resolution appointing Dr. Shannon Tharp Gillum as a member of the Board of Directors of the Allegheny County Sanitary Authority for a term to expire on March 26, 2020. This seat was previously filled by Greg Jones.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Dr. Gillum, if you would just sort of give us our background to the general public, or your background to the general public. I know we spoke a little bit offline, and why you're interested in helping the region. As a lot of people, if they don't know, Alcosan not only serves the city of Pittsburgh, but 83 municipalities. So if you just want to talk a little bit about your background, why you're interested in, Alcosan, stormwater, just a little bit about that.
Thank you. So, my name is Shanna Tharp Gilliam. I have a doctorate in developmental psychology with a certification in program evaluation and public policy. I have lived in the Pittsburgh area for just over 20 years. During that time, I earned my graduate degrees from the University of Pittsburgh, and then joined the staff at Rand Corporation, where I worked for 8 years as a researcher, looking deeply at public policy issues around education and health. After my time there, I joined the staff at the Homewood Children's Village, where I've been since July 2011 as the Director of Research and Evaluation. So, given my history, my experience professionally, this appointment is very interesting to me because I feel that I could be helpful to the region in the work that Alcosan is endeavoring. This is important. It's very important. Pittsburgh is the Three Rivers. Pittsburgh is its families. Pittsburgh is its jobs. We are an innovation hub. We are a place where people can come and raise a family, can educate their kids, can live happy and good lives. And I feel that, Alcosan is important because water is the lifeblood of humanity.
No, I think that's great, and no other members are here, but I'll just speak. As we spoke over the phone for about 10 or 15 minutes, I think now's an exciting time to be part of that discussion at Alcosan, because it's probably going to be about a $3.5 billion investment in our infrastructure, in the future of our region, in our water quality. So I think, somebody with your background that's been sort of all over the county, basically, which I think is very helpful to Alcosan to understand the neighborhood level. And I know we spoke a little bit about this, but what we're going to be able to create in the future down there, besides the environmental impacts, but actually the job creations and where we're going, is really important, and it's sustainable, because the project that we're talking about probably going to take 20 plus years, hopefully sooner, but in reality it's going to be a very large project that we can hire a lot of people locally. You having neighborhood connections can help those individuals not necessarily get hired there, but when there's projects outside, when we're talking about stormwater maintenance and people that are looking for employment, and we have so many opportunities with this growth, that's really important. So I just want to say thank you. Greg started the CAP program down at Alcosan, so now you have to start a program at Alcosan. No pressure. But, you're going to find that, the staff down there is very good. It's a really important project, and, we're just happy to have you on board as a member, given your expertise. I have no further questions, so I will make see if anybody's coming, but I don't think so. So I'll make a motion to recess until City Council Standing Committee meeting.
Good morning and welcome to Pittsburgh City Council Standing Committee meeting of Wednesday, February 27th, 2019. Our first order of business is public comment. Members of the public that want to address council, please come forward. You'll be given 3 minutes. The green light means the start of your 3 minutes. The yellow light means you have 1 minute to summarize. The red light means your time has expired. Please relinquish the podium. I would like to remind everyone that the rules of council state that comment is limited to matters of concern, official actions, or deliberations which are or may be before council. Profanity will not be permitted, and order will be maintained at all times. First speaker, please.
Carlino Giampolo, Panther Hollow. Panther Hollow was one of Pittsburgh's first Italian neighborhoods. The early settlers, immigrants from the towns of Gambarale and Pizziforato in the Abruzzo region in central Italy, arrived in the 1880s. In 1900, over 200 Italian immigrants lived in Panther Hollow. And in 1920, at the height of the Italian immigration experience, the number grew to 470. The early settlers did not have easy access to other businesses, so the neighborhood became self-sufficient. There were 2 banks, 6 grocery stores, a travel company, a cow pasture, vegetable gardens, an outdoor bread oven, grape vineyards, and an Italian social club. Albert L. Bell Belisario passed away 2 months ago at the age of 94. His last wish to his family 1 week before he died was that they drive him through Panther Hollow. A cousin's last wish to his family before he passed away was that they scatter half of his ashes in Panther Hollow. To those who support a roadway through Panther Hollow from Hazelwood Green to Pitt and CMU, Panther Hollow is only a stretch of land for economic gain. To all of us who love this neighborhood, Panther Hollow is sacred. In 1963, Panther Hollow community faced a defining moment. University of Pittsburgh Chancellor Edward Litchfield sought to build there a futuristic 21st century research park. He aligned himself with the largest foundations, wealthiest banks and organizations in city government. He made one major miscalculation. He underestimated the fighting spirit and courage of the Abruzzese. My parents' generation moved into battle. They were led by men like Eugene Jeep Di Pasquale, Nicholas Nicky Bull Diolis, Gervasio Jerry Caffardi, Carl Gimp Giampolo, Anthony Deli Del Vecchio, Raymond Clark Kent Very, and Robert Mort Casciato. These men had fought in the jungles of the Pacific, the deserts of Africa, and the hills and valleys of Europe. In the battle for their community, they had the support of the power of the women of Panther Hollow, and from my grandparents' generation, the toughest of the tough, that gave birth to America's greatest generation. Litchfield was defeated, and within 2 years he was ousted as chancellor. My own generation is now faced with the choice for a defining moment. The same forces that aligned themselves with Litchfield also support the roadway, which will bring massive development and destroy this cultural treasure. We deeply honor the legacy of our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents that enriched our lives and made us proud to be Italian. Our generation will also triumph because those forces cannot defeat the spirit of the Abruzzese and their supporters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Okay. 1 minute, please. Wait 1 minute. This jar right here, my name is Yvonne F. Brown. This jar, it has Big Daddy on it. The reason why I brought this down, I hear in New York, the mayor is talking about charging people to be on the road. Well, Big Daddy, he works in the civic arena, down at the very last lot. Okay, I don't even know how to start talking to Big Daddy. I remember pennies were down. I would pick up the pennies, try to give me some. He got so he would stop me and tell me about the pennies. Now, he was telling me, as I sat there talking to him, you see the big trucks come barreling down, blowing the horn. He said, that's against the law. He said, tell the mayor, and I came before and told the mayor, he said, if you go down there where 7-Eleven is, sit right there. State policeman, city policeman, whatever, you'll catch them. And here goes a truck almost hitting somebody, and he said, listen, I have it all day long. So, mayor, you don't listen to me too much, because you didn't do the appointment that you said. And my son's father is now in Pittsburgh, and he wants to know what happened to his son. His name is Anthony Calvin Johnson, and that's my son, but his father's name is Calvin, and he wants to know what happened to his son. Now, also, I'm tired of yins being late, okay? I have here, this was in 2017, I have here 10:35. You started, no Rule 8. But what had happened early today, I was in 5:10, it's 10:20. Mr. Krause interrupted my conversation. The contempt he shows me, making sure he creates a hostile environment. You create this hostile environment. You, whenever you disrespect the people coming down and tell you, because you're ignorant of a lot of stuff, you know it. I'm ignorant of a lot of stuff. If I can tell you, why can't you listen? Okay, you can shake your head, because you know, I keep on telling you, I don't want to fuss with the Reverend, because God might just strike me before he gets him. Big Daddy, though, is a white man that my daughter, she didn't know that my kids see him, so they came past. That's our friend. She said, you don't know that old white man, and they fussed all the way to North Side. He is our friend. He sends us stuff. Big Daddy. So when I tell Big Daddy, he say, what did them kids say? That's our friend. My daughter said, you don't know that old white man. I think he likes to hear that, but he's a good man. He talks kind of vulgar. So I said, well, you know, how you get so ignorant? I guess because he's old. But please, if the mayor will listen, you need money, because you need to make up for them not coming a whole 20 minutes or a half an hour. You can get money from trucks coming through the city, making noise and scaring the people right up on them. So I hope, since you just got time, I want to put in for the job of Valley McDonald. I think I'm qualified. In fact, I don't want the 100,000. Give me 50. I'll even take 25,000. So that's 17,000, 75,000. Let's get a bus for the top of the hill so the old people can get to the hospital. Please do that for the old people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
What the heck am I doing here? My name is Les Ludwig. I'm from Squirrel Hill, the same house since 1963. So what does that have to do with you folks? Do you really realize what's going on in our country? Do you, as a leader in the black community, do you realize that when the federal government forgives taxes and doesn't collect them, that they also don't give you as many benefits? So therefore, we have a two-strata society. We have those 25,000, or roughly, if you want to define poverty, you have 25,000 as a line. Instead of taking the money in and taxing and rolling it over into education, housing, addiction, etc., you're getting nothing. Relatively speaking, nothing. And nobody's talking about it, and I end up laying a report on your table that says there's $374 trillion not being collected. And Mr. Trump, they call a businessman, and he can't see that much money. And he's worried about his chum change of $5 billion for a wall, and turns around and practically destroys our economy. It's a disgrace. Not one of them who has gotten up and talked and said, I want to be the president, has noticed that the money's laying on the table uncollected. It's a disgrace. When is one of you going to go ahead and go and say to someone in Washington, is Les crazy? Is he coming down here and screaming bloody murder about 370-some trillion dollars and it doesn't exist? Well, it does exist because the numbers are from the federal government. When is one of you going to have the courage and the contact level? I have a little time left. I came to Pittsburgh and took over a company called Supreme Dairy Products, and it was located originally under the center. Well, I'm out of time. I thank you. Goodbye now.
Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please. Anyone else want to address City Council? Seeing none, we'll ask the clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Cargill. Ms. Gross. Mrs. Harris. Mr. Kraus. Mr. Lavelle. Mr. O'Connor. Mrs. Kell-Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Strasburger.
Here.
Reverend Burgess. 7 members present.
Thank you very much. I want to start off with page 10, which is Public Safety Services Committee. Mr. Lavelle is the chair. We have a new paper.
Bill 1401, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Safety to enter on behalf of the city into an agreement with the National Association of State Voting Law Administrators for training and certification services regarding public safety boat operations at a sum not to exceed $360,000 and providing for the payment of the cost thereof.
Motion to approve with discussion.
Second, Mr. Well.
First, there's a technical amendment in front of council, so make a motion to amend. It simply adds the words "subject to annual appropriation by City Council."
Need a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Mr. Bell, back on the amended bill.
Thank you. Second, as you all know, public safety now has a public safety fireboat, and this is to actually provide the training for all the people who have to man that boat, steer that boat, work that boat, and provide public safety for our city.
Any conversation? No conversation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Thank you very much. Positive recommendations. That takes us now to the front of the agenda. Finance and Law Committee, of which I am the chair. We do have a deferred paper.
Bill 698, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code Title I, Administrative Article 7, Procedures, Contracts to reflect current best practices in local government procurement.
I need a motion.
Motion to approve?
Need a second?
Second.
Second. If you would,
Yeah, I mean, I just want to tell everybody this is the bill that we had amended last week. I don't know if there are any questions. We could bring Bill up if there are.
all right.
Sorry, the administration's here as well.
If both of you would come forward, both Bill Urbanik and the Acting Finance Director, if you would come forward, identify yourself, and Corey, you still have the floor.
Okay. Do you guys just want to sort of talk us through the technical changes? I know there was concern from council about the process, so we have a little more oversight if you just want to touch on that, and then I'm good after that. Thanks, Rev.
Bill Urbanik, City Council Budget Director.
Jennifer Olzinger, Acting Director, Office of Management and Budget. Yeah, just to talk a little bit to the changes. First of all, I wanted to thank you all for we had 100% representation in the debriefing that we did a couple weeks ago to go through this with all the offices, and I really appreciate the feedback that the council members who were present and their staff gave us. We had a couple little changes there that Mike actually wrote up and changed for us to further change this. But basically, I think we all realize that our procurement code has not been really looked at in a very long time. We did a couple changes a few years ago to start to modernize. These are additional changes, fixing some of the big gaps that we had, codifying some of our current practices to ensure that we are really doing the competitive bidding process. And there are some technical and clerical changes in here as well while we were doing that. But the goal is, right now, these are the hot topics, the gaps that we needed to fill. And then again, with council, the controller's office, and my office in law, we plan to, over the next year, look at the entire section of 161 as a group and see where we really need to go in the future. The biggest things in here, there are certain types of contracts we use that we don't have specific direction on. We want to make sure that anybody on a pre-qualified contract is given the opportunity to bid on those projects as they come up. That's codifying a current policy that we already do, and it's making it code. We are reducing the amount of a professional services agreement minimum to go through the formal process of a scoring committee in the practices from $30,000 to $3,000, so that departments can no longer just go get 3 bids on their own under $30,000 for professional service and not go through the proper process. We have found that cost is not necessarily a determining factor in a professional service contract, and there could be something that has a nominal cost, but it could be very complex and public-facing in nature. So we feel that all of those things over the discretionary limit should really go through a process and be centralized through. We added a section on bid protests and how we will handle bid protests. Our code had nothing addressing that. We redesigned a section on the waivers and things that are eligible for waivers of the competitive process to be requested. We had areas of code which were conflicting. We updated those separate areas and referred them back to a new section on waivers that completely outlines all the types of waivers that they can request. Just because they request a waiver does not mean that it will be approved, whether that waiver be something that is sole source, single source, a continuation of services, all of those things. And it's also making it clear in code that just because you get a waiver doesn't mean that you also do not have to follow the contracting processes, go to council when appropriate as per code. So those are the high level changes. Again, we met a couple weeks ago with council members and their staff to go through the details. I think we addressed any and all questions that were there, but if you have any additional at this time, we'd be happy to talk to them.
Other conversation? Councilwoman Gross.
So I appreciate that you started off by saying there's actually more work to be done in this chapter. And I think that council members are eager to have that conversation, and that's part of the reason why we've been putting holds on it till now. And so a part of what you just described as improvements, I think, is a really good idea, right? That internally in the administration, there are departments who have too high of a limit to do their own individual RFPing and accepting of bids. And so I'm supportive that there's now more robust process in place at OMB that can assure equity, that can assure fairness. I would hope, I know council members are concerned, that are also abiding by the EEORC stuff that I know we had a post agenda on. And so those parts I'm supportive, and I can see that a lot of work has been done to clean up that section of the code. There's a second section, though, that I've asked about before, and I continue to have concerns about. So I see where you mentioned there's a reduction from 30,000 down to 3,000 for those internal references. Thank you. But then, on what's in my text file, page 3 of 13, and it's section 4. I'm not looking for the letter that it's under. It looks like B, section 2, B4. That it says departments seeking to enter into, and this is new language because it's bolded, to enter into commodity or non-professional service contracts with an estimated value of over 30,000. I think this is the part that's concerning to some members. Shall be deemed to have received pre-authorization to solicit.
So
Because of council's previous year in the December of the previous year's overall $500 to $600 million budget votes. And I think that gives me pause. So there's no reason for that in there. It's not struck in mine.
It's in brackets.
Yeah, we're changing,
That's being deleted. That was part of the original language, and that was one of the big problems we had because it changed the councilmanic amount.
Thank you.
Along
Okay.
with that, the Home Rule
could you
Charter
show-
would require that to have a public hearing prior.
I think you're talking about a different
Oh,
section.
okay.
I apologize,
Mine
Bill.
does, mine
I don't
does
have
not
mine
look
in front of
struck.
No, I
And
think
is my text file wrong?
No, I think he's talking about a different section. The 3s and the 30s get very confusing. Basically, what this section did, this existed before, that all this is saying is that you have pre-authorization to solicit bids. That means that they don't have to come to you. If the amount is approved in their budget, it's saying the council's adoption of the relative annual budget. So if DOMI wants to do an RFP for the LED streetlights, they don't have to come to you and say, can I go out
I'm
to
going
bid
to stop you
for
right
this?
there. I have a total problem with that. I object to that section entirely.
And this is something that has been
Especially on
here-
something like, I'm talking
Yeah.
DOMI soliciting RFPs out for LED streetlights throughout every right-of-way of 1,000 miles of street. That's exactly why I have concerns over that section. It was an
And-
excellent example, thank you, that's all. I don't need any more.
Yeah, and
I
just,
don't need any more comments.
Mr. Lavelle.
You mentioned pre-qualifications. How is that being done now based upon these changes?
Right, so our pre-qualified contracts, while previously code had allowed for us to solicit in that way, we did not have anything in code outlining how the city would use those contracts. When we put those bids out, we tell the folks that if you pre-qualify, you agree to our terms and conditions, you provide your insurance, all of those things, that you will be given the opportunity to bid on projects when they come up. In the past, that had not been really enforced or monitored. People would tend to just pick a person and assign the work, and we want to ensure by code that they are at least soliciting everyone on the list and giving them the opportunity to bid, and then we take the low bidder.
Okay, good. That's actually
But that's
one of-
codifying the
That was one of
practice
my
we've been
concerns. How often will you go out for pre-qualification?
As projects arise. The actual master contracts themselves go out every few years for a new pre-qualified list. The majority of our current contracts expire in April, so we will be redoing those and putting out a new batch for new folks. But they can sign up at any time during the contract term if they meet the qualifications and are approved by their director. So it's a rolling enrollment.
Okay, I guess my concern is, historically speaking, pre-qualification in some respects limits small businesses, particularly small minority businesses, because if they're not within that 3-4 year cycle of when a contract is being run, they then have to wait, and so they're not on a yearly basis being able to get into that cycle. And so what I would want to see is something that allows a rolling pre-qualification throughout the length of that contract, so that it's not, once we release this, you now have to wait another 4 years. But if I'm up and coming, I can now say, oh, this is something I can actually go after.
Yeah, so currently our actual pre-qualified contracts are rolling enrollment. They can hop onto the list at any time. These are for commodities and non-professional services. So for the professional services contracts that we're doing the more on-call type things that will be starting to go out in the next couple of months here, those will have a set time period for groups of things and will not be able to be open enrollment for a lot of other reasons. We can get into more details, but we also have a strict, I believe it's a 2-year cap on those, so that we don't go 3, 4, 5 years without opening it back up again.
Okay, if we vote today, I would abstain. Just I want to make sure I fully understand that piece of it.
Councilwoman Smith.
Motion to hold for 1 week, and I just will say that I think that this is something the Women's Caucus has been very interested in, something we were working on. I think when amendments and things are coming forward, we'd like to sit down together and go over those things to make sure we're comfortable. And I hear my colleagues saying that they also have some concerns. So I think that maybe a briefing and going over some of this together would be more helpful, because I want to make sure that I know that you've done a lot of work and that there's been a lot of conversation, and I appreciate it. And I wish that we had done ours at least on my end. I wish I had scheduled something sooner to talk to the Women's Caucus together about this, but I do think that we want to make sure that we're comfortable with this. As I said, this was something that the Women's Caucus was working on, and I appreciate the shared concern and shared vision, but we want to make sure that we're agreeable to some of the changes. So with that said, motion to hold for 1 week.
There's a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposers, nay. It is held 1 week. Again, thank you very much for your work. I really appreciate
no problem,
your hard work and working with you.
No problem. Happy to address any other questions.
Thank you.
All right.
And we
Let us
also
know.
said we would work with Reverend, so I want to make sure, as the finance chair, so
I'm here to
I
be
want to sit
supportive.
down with you.
Okay, we're all good. We have a new paper.
Bill 1396, resolution providing for the conveyance by the city of certain property having been placed for sale to adjourning property owners in conjunction with the City of Pittsburgh Side Yard Program, item A through I, 2022 Fifth, 576 Blessing, 526 Lincoln, 6623 Shetland, 0 Hazelwood, 737 Industry, 321 Cedarhurst, and 0 California.
Need a motion.
Motion approved.
Second. Second, any conversation? No conversation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposers, nay. Next bill, please.
Bill 1397, resolution providing for the sale of certain property acquired by the city at Pittsburgh, tax sale items A through L, 504, 506 Lowell, 6513, 6501, and 6503, 6507 Meadow, 6824 Fifth, 27 Tishmill, 5011 Lytle, 0 Letty Hill, 3821 Wilkesboro, 1617 Brownsville, and 0 Brownsville.
Need a motion. Need a second.
Second.
Any conversation? No conversation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Next bill, please.
Bill 1398, resolution repealing items and resolutions approved on various dates, which authorizes sale of property in various wards of the city due to an incompletion of sale, 515 Lowell and 17 Curtin.
Need a motion. Need a second. Any conversation? No conversation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposers, nay. Next bill, please.
Bill 1399, resolution providing for the filing of petitions for the sale of certain property acquired at tax sales to a City of Pittsburgh-based community development corporation for the purpose of advancing the interests of the community through redevelopment items A and B, 846 East Ohio and 302 West Burgess.
Need a motion.
Motion approved.
Need a second.
Is this the
Any-
one with Darlene?
No, that's not the one she has
Just making sure.
interest in. Any conversation? No conversation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. A positive recommendation. That takes us to the invoices. There are invoices on the table. I need a motion.
Motion approved.
Need a second. Any conversation about the invoices? No conversation about the invoices. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. There are no intra-departmental transfers. There are P cards. The P cards are also on the table. I need a motion for the P cards.
Motion approved.
Need a
Second.
second. Any conversation on the P cards? No conversation about the P cards. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. That takes us to page 10 on this fast-moving agenda. Public Works Committee, Ms. Kel Smith is the chair. We do have a new paper.
Bill 1405, resolution authorizing the transfer by the city to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Transportation of certain public right-of-way, slope easement, and temporary construction easement rights on certain property of the 22nd Ward of the city to secure the right-of-way of the West Ohio Street Bridge construction project.
Need a motion, Ms. Smith.
At the request of Councilwoman Harris, let me just see real quick. Motion to hold 1 week.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Next bill, please.
Bill 1406, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure of the city to apply for grant funding from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to construct streetscape updates to the Walnut Street and the Shady Side Neighborhoods Business District. In the event the grant is awarded, this resolution provides for an agreement and expenditures not to exceed $250,000 for this stated purpose.
We do not skip Bill 1407, but do 1408, 1409, 1410, 1411, and 1412 together with this bill.
Okay. Bill 1408, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Works of the city to apply for grant funding for the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to expand and redevelop Homewood Park. In the event the grant is awarded, this resolution provides for an agreement and expenditures not to exceed $250,000. Bill 1409, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Works of the city to apply for grant funding for the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to renovate the Jefferson Recreation Center. In the event the grant is awarded, this resolution provides for an agreement and expenditures not to exceed $250,000. Bill number 1410, resolution authorizing the mayor and director of the Department of Public Works to apply for grant funding from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to replace the Robert E. Williams Community Center. In the event the grant is awarded, this resolution provides for an agreement and expenditures not to exceed $250,000. Bill number 1411, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Works to apply for grant funding from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to renovate the South Side Park. In the event the grant is awarded, this resolution provides for an agreement and expenditures not to exceed $250,000. Bill 1412, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Works to apply for grant funding from the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County Community Infrastructure and Tourism Fund to renovate Stevens School in Council District 2. In the event the grant is awarded, this resolution provides for an agreement and expenditures not to exceed $250,000.
Need a motion, Ms. Smith.
Motion to approve.
Need a second.
Second.
Second. Any other conversation? No conversation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposer, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposers, nay. All right. That takes us to Bill 2019-1407 on page 10.
Bill 1407, resolution vacating a portion of Spruce Way situated in the 6th Ward, 7 Council District.
Whose district is it? Who's 7th district?
Need a
Want me to
motion?
Motion to approve discussion?
Need a second. Second. Any conversation?
I'll just say that you all know that I have a very anti-vacating streets in my district, especially near the river. There's, many of them were vacated over 100 years ago, and we've got these big blocks that you can't walk through. But this one, you've seen me do one other, I think, only in the last 4 or 5 years, because it was really already not existing. And this is a paper street that runs through one of the little blocks in the Strip District, and it's already been half vacated. So there's no way of getting through this alley already, because the businesses on the property owners on either side had already vacated the other. Having said that, I made sure that everybody around it was okay with it. And so this one, even though in the future we're trying to gain back street grids so that we have smaller walkable grids throughout, especially near the Allegheny River, this particular one, everyone's supportive of the vacation. So that's That's all I'll say. Thanks.
Any other conversation? No conversation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. That takes us to page 11, the Human Resources Committee. Mrs. Harris is the chair. We have a new paper.
Bill 1400, resolution providing that the city enter into a professional services agreement and/or contract when consultants and/or service providers for professional services in connection with the civil service and MPO ETC required assessment and evaluation of public safety candidates and providing for payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $160,000.
Need a motion. Ms. Harris is not here. I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Need a second. Any conversation? No conversation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. This takes us to page 12, Land Use and Economic Development Committee. Ms. Gross is the chair. We have a deferred paper.
Bill 1008, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code Title 9, zoning Article 1, Section 90203, zoning map by changing from R1AH, residential single unit attached high density district, to LNC, local neighborhood commercial district, certain property roughly bounded by Larimer Avenue, Maxwell Way, Stopner Way, and Meadow Street, all in the Allegheny County Block and Lot System 12th Ward.
Need a motion.
Motion to
Ms. Gross.
approve.
Need a second.
Second.
Any conversation? No conversation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. It is positive recommendation. Next paper, please.
Bill 1415, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code Title 9, zoning Article 1, Section 9023, zoning map, and Article 3, overlay zoning district, development overlay district, iPod interim planning overlay district by adding a new section 90702K to establish a new interim planning overlay district for the inclusionary housing interim planning overlay district.
Need a motion to hold and refer to the Planning Commission.
Motion to hold for a report and recommendation from Planning
Need
Commission.
a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your work on this issue. Hopefully, this will be a template for all of our city. Intergovernmental Affairs Committee.
I want to also congratulate Councilwoman Gross on doing a really great job with this, because I mean it's easy to say you're going to do this or want to do that, when you're not sitting in these seats, but when you actually realize what you have to go through and what you have to do, a lot of times you hear people that have no clue talking about what they would do and how they would do it quicker or how they would do things better. But when you have no clue of what's really going on behind the scenes and what it really takes to do some of this, I mean, this was significant.
It was over 2 years of community
And
meetings.
so I want to thank you for your work and your diligence on this.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Strasburger.
I'll echo that. I think what the beauty of this is that, as Councilwoman Cale Smith mentioned last week, it's, one size does not fit all for all districts or all parts of the city. And so certainly Councilwoman Gross's district is different from mine. It's growing much more quickly now as opposed to having grown slowly over the last 10 or 15 years like the district that I represent. I still think that it could be a template for a lot of different neighborhoods in the district I represent. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of this and lessons learned.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank
We
you.
are as well.
Thank you very much. Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, Mr. O'Connor is the chair. We have a new paper.
Bill 1395, ordinance amending and supplementing Pittsburgh Code Title 1, Administrative Article 9, Boards, Commissions, and Authority. Clean Pittsburgh Commission and Commission Member, Meeting and Chair, Powers and Duties of the Commission, Reauthorization of the Commission, Effective Date to update the purposes, Meeting Rules, Membership Activities, and remove the requirement that the Commission be reauthorized.
Need a motion, Mr.
Motion
Corner.
to approve, discussion.
Need a second, Mr. Carter. Need a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Carter.
So this is the first time a group actually wants to come in front of the council and come to the table. So can we have everybody from the Clean Pittsburgh Commission please come up? If you don't know, the Clean Pittsburgh Commission's been around for a very long time. I was actually on the board. They do an award ceremony every year, and they honor a lot of people that keep our city clean, and they're all volunteers to do it. This is where, the passion and the love for our city, this commission really shows what people of Pittsburgh care about, and how they care about each and every neighborhood, each and every street, and they take pride in what they do. And I'll allow the commission members to introduce themselves. If you want to just give us a bit of an overview of some of the changes that you're looking at, we have to obviously approve to continue this. But thank you again for your support. I will say that they are supposed to be funded by citations for litter. And I think it's very rare when we actually do that. But, that's something that, must be enforced so that we can continue to fund commissions like this. So I'll allow everybody to introduce themselves and then talk briefly, and we'll get to council members. Alicia, you want to start?
Sure. My name's Alicia Carberry. I'm the vice chair of the Clean Pittsburgh Commission. I actually joined before I started working for the city. I started showing up to meetings, and they accepted me after some time. But I am also, I work in the mayor's office as the operations assistant with the chief operations officer.
What area do you live in? Can you each tell us?
Sure. I live in Polish Hill.
My name is Myrna Newman. I'm the chair of the Clean Pittsburgh Commission and the executive director of Allegheny Cleanways, which was one of the two, founding nonprofits on the commission. And I also live in Polish Hill, ironically.
I'm Justin Stockdale. I'm the co-executive director of Pennsylvania Resources Council. I do not live in the city of Pittsburgh, and PRC, as Myrna points out, with Allegheny Cleanways founded, I think wrote the enabling legislation for the commission back, I think we just decided mid-2000s.
And at the time, the executive director did live in the city of Pittsburgh in Banksville. I just had to point
Dave
that out.
Mazza, my predecessor. I'm here representing PRC as well as Sarah Alessio Shea, who's on the CPC.
Where do you live now?
I live in Bell Acres.
If I could just interject too, so this is representative of the leadership team. We are a commission of, 16 currently, but as part of the legislation, looking to expand to 18, and keeping geographic diversity in mind.
My name is Erica Young. I'm a public affairs coordinator for waste management. I'm a secretary on the commission, and I used to live in Shadyside, but recently moved to the suburbs, Scott Township.
Just a little bit in, you would have been in District 2.
Yeah. Do you just want to explain what the changes are, and then I'll open it up to council members if they have any questions.
Sure. So our legislation, our founding legislation hadn't been updated since we were founded. So we wanted to make sure that it really matched our current practices. Part of that is establishing a neighborhood of focus for a 2-year cycle and really coordinating the efforts of each of the organizations. Myrna mentioned Allegheny Cleanways, Justin's representing Pennsylvania Resources Council, to really impact the neighborhoods that we're working in a collaborative and efficient way.
Excuse me, do you have a copy for us to look at?
Oh, sure.
Of what the changes are?
Yeah, this is,
Are the changes on here?
yeah, I mean,
Like underlined or something?
yeah, I pulled that off of the Legistar, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, so, and initially we were tasked with a number of things in addition to improving air quality, and we're not, Councilman O'Connor mentioned that we're volunteers and not quite flush with cash. So yeah, we really wanted to limit our scope so that we could be more effective in beautifying neighborhoods, organizing cleanups, and affecting policy around a clean and beautiful city.
And we wanted to thank the council also for support over the last few years for the meet and greet, the Garbage Olympics this year, CDBG money. Many of you have funneled money to the two organizations through CDBG.
Allocated. Allocated sounds better than funneled.
I'm sorry. Allocated. Sorry. So we're very appreciative of that. We have been, as Alicia mentioned, for the past 4 years, we've had a neighborhood of focus, and started off in the Hazelwood was our first neighborhood of focus, I think, and then hilltop communities of Belts Hoover, Knoxville, and Allentown. And then we went to the north side communities of Perry Hilltop and Fineview, and now our 4th year we're wanting to focus on the neighborhood of Homewood. And this is really the first year where we have, with CDBG cutbacks and so forth, there's fewer monies to bring to a community that probably needs even more resources.
Yeah, and I would like to follow on to what Myrna just said and point out that I think that PRC and Allegheny Cleanways have supported and contributed a lot of work to the city over the years, both directly through our organizations as well as through CPC. Alicia's comments that it's volunteer. This is a group of people that is not just us. There are probably another 8 or 9 people that attend these meetings, and various community partners will drop in from time to time depending on what the subject matter is. And it's all being done either through direct contributions, private fundraising from the organizations that are at the table. OPDC has been involved in years past. Again, other organizations, not just us. And really, I think that one of our goals here is, one, to codify this so it's not sunsetted on a 5-year cycle. It's one of the key changes in this legislation. And 2, to open up this conversation about if the goals of the CPC are truly to be met and we're actually able to accomplish all the work we're setting out to, that we identify and define some broader commitment from the city into the support of the work of the CPC, right? Not just the enabling legislation, but we could go on and on and on about all the work that's been done in just the 5 years that I've been involved in the CPC, and this goes back another 5 or 10 years prior to that. These are really significant results, both directly in communities, neighborhoods of focus. We've brought a lot of cutting-edge programs into those neighborhoods that have been replicated now across our repeating visits to new neighborhoods, but also taken on by other programs and other projects, both of the city and others. So again, we're really encouraging you all to, again, be aware of what CPC is doing, that it is a significant contribution into the city, and that we continue to evolve who the CPC is.
I would just add before I open up, sorry, Rev, that you have some very supportive residents. I think you have stewards in almost every neighborhood in the city of Pittsburgh. I will say that Erica and I have a joint one in Boris, who has been around for a very long time. I would tell you that if he were here today, he would probably wake council up a little bit. And thank you for, Boris, if you're watching, thank you for everything. He's done an amazing job at pushing for just residential volunteers. And I think without the passion that you had to start this commission, you wouldn't be where you are today. So I just want to give him a quick shout out. But thank you again for your work, and I'm good. Thanks, Rev.
Smith.
So I want to first point out a couple things. I want to thank you first for your work, but I want to point out a few things. I want to point out that Boris, as you just mentioned, actually started after a phone call to me as a resident, not as an elected official, where I connected him to 40 of the neighborhoods that Rob Kezrowski at the time had suggested he contact me because I knew people across the city. And so he called me and said that he was able to build upon his cleanup efforts with 40 neighborhoods, thanks to those leaders. So I want to thank those people that jumped on board immediately, not knowing what this was at the time, and thank Boris for his work. And I do want to make sure that that I mentioned that Dump Busters also started with a phone call to our office. And those are projects that I think in our area, the anti-litter campaign started in our district, and we expanded it citywide. The environmental projects that we're working on now with e-recycling started in our office. And so I think that a lot of times people think of these things as East End initiatives, and I think that they don't realize how much comes from the southwest of the river in terms of making these things, starting these things off as pilot programs, but making them available citywide and really making sure funding is available. And this is one of the projects, one of the commissions I'd really like to see receive more funding, because I think that you have been amazing for our community in so many ways. Last year, I want to be honest, I was a little disappointed that there was a focus in one part, I think it was last year, or maybe the year before, just in the Hilltop area, where I think that there's a need, but I also think there's other needs. And I realize you have to do what you have, spread your resources, or spread thin, and you have to do what you can to make the most impact. But there are other neighborhoods that are desperately in need of help. And I think if there's some way we can help build upon that, increase your volunteerism, extend some financial support there. Those are things I'd like to talk with you about. I'm interested in doing that, especially because, as I mentioned, they started in our area. I hate to see all the effort and all the resources be spent outside of our area and not shared equally across the city. I am concerned about the board. We did have, Sally Stadelman did live in our district, but now she's moved to Anthony Coghill's district. I don't know why. So we don't have, oh, she moved to Councilwoman Harris's district. I apologize. So we don't have, so did my son. So we don't have a representative from the West. And so I really want to make sure, that there is a representative from the West End there, and I'd like to make a recommendation for that. So, and not just one or two. I don't just want a token person from the West End all the time, because that's, I see that a lot of times, and I want to be thankful. I want to be honest. This administration has put more people from our area and recommendations that I've given them on boards and authorities. So I want to acknowledge that they've done that, but I don't want just one person here or there. I want to make sure that, as the East End has a significant number of people on boards and commissions, I want to make sure the West End and Southwest of the river and North Side also have some of those, numbers across the board, that they're evenly dispersed and not just one person speaking for the entire West End. Just like you have various opinions, so do we in the West. And I say this as an East End girl whose mother still lives on Fifth Avenue, so I have a fondness for the East End, but I also want to make sure our area that I represent is represented in the Southwest area. And I do want to thank and acknowledge Missy, who's done a ton of work in the anti-litter campaign, and she's the anti-litter coordinator. She has done, and again, the administration has given her the authority to get cameras, to issue citations, and to do more. I think it would be helpful to have her have more help in the community with people who can actually issue the citations, because one person is not going to catch everybody littering or dumping in the city of Pittsburgh, but a group of people might have a better chance. And so I'd like to talk about that too, and how we're using that. Enforcing some of these fines, because I think then we could get more additional funding to you in a way that's making the people actually violating the code paying for the cleanup, and not the people that every day are doing the right thing in the city of Pittsburgh, taking more tax money off of them. But so I'd like to talk about that, but I really want to acknowledge that she really did a huge cleanup over in Sheridan on Motor Street, where there was illegal dumping occurring there. And honestly, it makes me sick, because sometimes you talk about the illegal dumping, and I don't think people realize the correlation between the illegal dumping and the landslides that are occurring in the city of Pittsburgh, but it is significant. And I mean, I know particularly in our area, some of the landslides were attributed to the illegal dumping that was occurring. And what really is upsetting is a lot of times, people go on social media and they're making all kinds of comments about the city and about this and some of those people are the very people that are doing the illegal dumping and doing things that are harming the city. People that say that they love their neighborhoods and their communities forever, but they're really causing, damage to their hillsides and to their community with the illegal dumping and the flooding. I mean, we have flooding in the West End, and it was all due to illegal dumping. And so I think that people need to realize the significant impact. It's not just, there's litter on the ground, it looks ugly. I mean, it's causing significant problems for our city and for our residents. So I just want to thank you and acknowledge the work you do and say how important this is. And if there's anything I can do, I'd like to and I'll have a conversation with you. And I want to just say, Alicia, you've been amazing. And I notice you even celebrate your birthday picking up trash. I just want to say, who does that?
I do love garbage. And Myrna and Allegheny Cleanways have been very kind to let me use their dumpster and pull a bunch of debris off of a hillside or an empty lot. Yeah, this September will be my 5th year doing that.
Yeah, that's really strange. I see her birthday pictures and she's picking up trash. But I also, talking about the dumpsters, when we do the e-recycling program, they're supposed to have dump sites across the city where people can come in and do those cleanups. I'd like to do some of those coordinated with maybe with our state reps who also do some of the other services, the shredding events and some other things, and just do some real cleanup efforts in each sector of the city, if not neighborhood of the city. I'd love to do neighborhood, but sector definitely.
Yes, and if I may, I would encourage collection site rather than dump site, right? We'd want to drop them off in a constructed manner. Yes, that's an excellent idea.
So. Okay, I'd just like to see it all coordinated.
And those hard to recycle events were something that we had kind of piloted with Pennsylvania Resources Council in our neighborhoods of focus as part of, a number of different efforts to clean up, but to also get things out of people's basements and attics so that they weren't ending.
They're amazing organizations. I mean, honestly, I who makes a living wanting to clean up trash? But I appreciate it because it really has such an impact on our environment in such a positive way for what you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harris.
I was just going to talk about Missy, too. She's great. And she's involved with your group. Okay. And Allegheny Cleanways, right? Okay. I donate to them. Actually, I have a little story that a neighbor come rushing up the house and said, they're throwing tires over the hill when all this garbage. So I go down, and here they're picking them up and carrying them up over the hill. And I said, I have to give you a proclamation after what they did on that hillside. It was just wonderful. So every year I donate to your group, and I anytime I call, you're out there. And I just want to thank anybody that's with Allegheny Greenways and anybody working with Missy, because she was out there alone for a while. And I mean, she's a real activist when it comes to garbage, and you sound like you're like following her ways. But thank you for all you do.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gross.
Thank you. So I'm glad you all are here today, and I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about kind of what it's like in the cleanups. It's just my sense that although we're all giving all of it our time and energy, that it's getting worse, right? So, and especially I just wanted to also share that we're talking about, it used to be tires and TVs, but what we've been, I think, increasingly paying attention to is our single-use consumer products, single-use plastics, and the volume of waste that it seems like every decade, I'm in my 50s, every decade it seems like there's more, not just stuff, there's stuff in people's houses as well. Those hard to recycle events are fantastic for clearing that out, but people's houses are full, but then we're also generating like the kind of daily amount of trash from grocery stores or takeout containers, and I would just want to give you a chance to speak to that. Yeah.
I'll start with so we've been in existence for 19 years now, and during that time we've cleaned over Allegheny Cleanways.
Yeah.
Yes. Not the commission, not the Clean Pittsburgh Commission, but Allegheny Cleanways has been in existence for 19 years. We've cleaned up an estimated 5.1 million pounds of trash. It's not just the city, it's the county also. I mean, it's not just a citywide problem, it's a countywide problem. We just did a countywide survey that we finished last year, and we estimate that there are 486 dump sites, over 27,000 illegally discarded tires,
Wow.
and well over 1,000 tons of trash countywide, just from our driving survey throughout the county. So it's a huge problem, and I think that, as you indicated, I'm not sure that it's getting worse. I think we're more sensitive to it. I think it used to be a problem that was just accepted, and I think that it's not accepted anymore. So when we see it, it hurts. It feels differently. I think one thing that is increasing, though, as you mentioned, are the plastics and the single-use items.
Mm-hmm.
And Justin can certainly talk more about that. But one thing that we're going to be trying to do this year, or looking for funding right now, is to really get a handle on what that quantity is in the illegally discarded stream that we deal with. So we're going to be doing a waste audit, so to speak, for a week of all the trash that we collect, both in litter cleanups along the riverfront, because we also do riverfront cleanups, and then in the dump sites, and really try to weigh and actually categorize by brand, which could get particularly interesting, of what is being discarded.
Wow, we know that there are some manufacturers that are talking about eliminating their single-use items, which is just fantastic. And we know that there are places that have banned single-use in the waste stream and in the city. So I'm really encouraged by these moves, and I think that we're ready to have serious conversations about it. So I really want to appreciate you all for pioneering and calling everyone's attention to the work, and also organizing ways that citizens can get involved. And I think that we are ready to have bigger conversations. So I don't see the legislation. Was it related? Because it's not in my packet, these ordinance amendments.
No,
I just couldn't find it, so I apologize.
I'm sorry, printed.
That's all right. I'll pull it up once I get back to the office. I'm very supportive and encouraged by your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Strasburg.
And proud to represent two of the testifiers here. Thank you.
If I could just make one comment to that, to
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilman Gross's questions. I think this is one of the opportunities for the CPC that you have a collection of not just trash advocates, but, I would self-proclaimed garbage nerd, and also policy nerd that, we know more about your trash than any of you ever want to know. So some of these questions, like it feels like there's more illegal dumping. Well, we look at that and understand that, well, why is that? And one of the things we've talked about for the 5 years I've been involved is lack of access to disposal sites. Residents have a trash can to put out front, and the perception of some is, well, my couch clearly can't go in my garbage can, so therefore I got to get rid of it somewhere else. And they perceive there's no access, even though the city crews will happily pick up that couch. All right, so it's education, but it's also physical resources available to residents to access these services. Again, the city has made some big progress on that recently, and we hope to see that grow and continue. But we would hope that the CPC becomes sort of the voice for those, the technical side of these questions, that we can help advise the city government on, how best to solve these questions.
We do have some suggestions too, if you want to know them. So
ranges from, again, developing new resources and infrastructure in support of these programs to, things. I talk to one of Myrna's staffers frequently about the volume of litter that enters our rivers through storm drains.
Right,
and
absolutely.
some of the innovative solutions that he's brought to my attention that are being used globally to solve that problem that are truly accessible here in Pittsburgh. They're not complex, but it's getting, again, those conversations started so we're actually managing the issue rather than, in that case, very literally watching it float down the river.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Strasburger.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here and for the work that you do on the commission and outside of the commission as well. So, Councilman O'Connor mentioned at the beginning of this bill that your sole source of funding is, or a dedicated funding comes from violations, litter violations and citations. So what does that actually result in? How much does that result in for you?
$0 as far as I know.
$0. Okay. And so everything that you have is raised outside of that process, from foundations, from personal donations, from CDBG money. Has there been discussion on the commission as to other possible ways that you could seek support, other creative ways that are similar in nature to the litter citations, but are, so it wouldn't be pulling from the budget per se from some other source, but would be similar, but actually get you some dedicated funding?
Yeah, so last summer we had our annual meeting with the mayor, and he committed the cell tower fees that would be collected in the right-of-way by Mobility and Infrastructure. However, that's been held up by FCC legislation. I don't quite understand the full scope of that. So until that moves forward, and again, that's an uncertain, unforeseen amount, we aren't sure.
And we're not sure if is it the cell towers or the actual
small cell technology. It's
there you go.
The central point is to find an existing vehicle or an existing revenue generating vehicle that the city currently has deployed. Another example is the billboard tax that have yet to be enforced.
20 million. Over 20 million.
Yeah, the windfall at the outset of that will be enormous, presumably, provided that is the finally brokered deal. But the ongoing stable support, we looked to the Shade Tree Commission a few years ago to understand how are they funded from the city government, because it's a very similar question, right? The Shade Tree Commission is responsible for shade trees in the city. They receive a portion of the revenues generated out of, I think, the bus shelter advertising fund. And that is dedicated funding for that program, and it's year to year. And it's one of our struggles is nonprofits, not just related to CPC, but that if it's every year we're coming back and asking repeatedly over and over again, year to year, there's no certainty to our program. So it's hard to deploy these neighborhood of focus in a broader area because we don't know if we have the support for it year to year. So finding that stable revenue source or funding source for the work of the CPC, I think we collectively agree is a really essential if the CPC is to perform all the things that we have, again, done in these micro-scale programs in neighborhoods only. For us to scale that broadly, it's going to take some real support.
Well, one of the challenges that I see is that so many of the sort of environmental services related penalties, fees, goes through the magisterial district court system. It's not a city function. I know my office is looking into quality of life ticketing that could allow the city to issue some of those, maybe on a pilot base, piloting that program and then seeing if we can do it citywide so that the city could actually just ticket you, just like the parking authority tickets you for a car for, illegal storage of trash on your porch or that sort of thing. So, I mean, there are probably some other ideas we could come up with, but I'd be interested in working with you on that so that you actually have real dedicated funding sources. Ideally, we would be ticketing for littering. Ideally, we would be able to get some money from all the really, really good work that others have mentioned that Missy has done, and some of those cameras that we've installed and are setting up to catch illegal dumpers. But it's a shame that it's not resulting in any funding for you. So many of us here probably would work with you on that.
I would just, there are many people that are victims of dumping as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just be cautious of that, we're not targeting or ticketing someone who would be a victim of dumping. They'd be dumping on their property. They didn't necessarily do it. But,
Correct, correct. Yeah, we'd have to make sure it was actually the person who's committing it.
I'm sure.
Caught on camera.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Coghill.
Yes, Alicia, I had no idea you were such a trash advocate. That's very admirable, It's great. 5 years still. That's before you were even hired with the city.
Do you know what I forgot to mention? Councilwoman Strasburger was part of a number
Oh,
of those.
is that right? Doesn't surprise me. That's great.
She also loves
started. I do.
All right. Well, I was a big fan of the then, Mr. Bob O'Connor, Mayor O'Connor, the Red Up. I don't know if everybody remembers that, but I love when an organization focuses on just picking up trash, for instance. But your focus is it when we talk about cleanup, are we talking about, let me just use my neighborhood for example. If I want to, if you come into my neighborhood to help out, okay, several things. There's some main roads that I actually pick up once in a while just because I feel like it's easier and quicker and I can't stand it, so I grab a big bucket and I have trucks and dumpsters so it's okay and I can get rid of it. So where would we start? I have a lot of streets that are lined with trash, but in particular I have a greenway that has, which I like to hike or walk every once in a while, and it has everything from washers to dryers, enormous amount of tires. And when I look at that, I think I would love to clean that out, but we need equipment. We need like a ATV to ride us back there, and it's just a skinny trail. I don't know how else you would get it out of there. So what would you supply? A plan or actual equipment, or can we get us a nice little something to haul out these things out of the middle of the woods,
If you want to donate an ATV to us, we would gladly accept it. No, we use human power to remove all of the dumping. Yeah. Well, we clean it up before the goats get in there, so the goats don't get injured. Right. Actually, we work closely with Allegheny Goatscape, but we use humans.
Yeah.
And send them over the hillsides. Our liability insurance and workers' comp is through the roof. Absolutely. Fortunately, we've never had any major injuries, but sometimes we have to carry tires or trash a quarter of a mile or half a mile to get them out of some of the greenways. We did a lot of work in the greenways in Hazelwood. We've done a lot of work on the north side. So we've actually done a lot of work in the greenways in your district too, but not recently.
Yeah, we're talking a 2-mile stretch here, where if you're on foot, it's just not going to work. You really do need a piece of machinery. And maybe that's a bigger problem for somebody else,
No, it does work. Yeah. I mean, it does work with people. That's what we do.
Right.
We had, in Westview, outside of the city, actually behind Nancy's house, it was probably easily a mile, and there were 200 tires. Some of them that were embedded in a creek. We had to dig out the creek, and then we hauled them. And big groups can daisy chain them. We have all kinds of.
So you'll supply dumpsters, like a dumpster on site somewhere for us?
We have a dumpster. We do work really closely. The one. Did I interrupt you?
No,
I'm so sorry. We have a great working relationship with the Public Works in the city.
Right.
And so,
Okay,
you
so
know, we
good. You
can-
guys work hand in hand.
We provide the dumpster and then.
If I could just
Sure, Lisa,
contextualize,
yes.
the commission itself, right, is member
Sorry.
organizations, Allegheny Cleanways, Pennsylvania Resources Council, a number of different folks. That also includes Public Works,
Got
the
it.
Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. So it's a way to merge city and nonprofit resources to
Yeah.
make sure that we're really doing the best we can to keep our city clean. So the different services that Myrna's speaking of are specific to Allegheny Cleanways, right? And they do a lot of the heavier lifting
Got
on
it.
things that our public works crews don't necessarily have the time or the resources to get to. The role of the commission, of course, the role of the commission in a lot of this has been moving away a little bit from organizing singular neighborhood cleanups and helping to empower the neighborhood stewards and the people who are on the ground every day picking up litter, such as yourself, Councilman, to help them, be better at what they're already doing. So we are trying to elevate and promote policy, get more funding to kind of prop up the work that's already being done. And then, and personally, there are a lot of different factors at play, right? So personally, we all walk our dogs, run up and down the steps in Polish Hill and pick up trash, but as a larger commission are working on these larger efforts.
But we do have the neighborhood of, when we're in the neighborhood of focus, the resources that we bring to the table get brought to that community. And so we do
you're really
upside
more
cleanups
about
and-
really working with the neighborhood group or groups that really want to take this on, and you can supply resources in whatever way you can, I love the idea of identifying the plastics and, because eventually at some point, if this problem continues, I mean, maybe somebody can address those companies, whether it's Kraft or
That's our goal.
whomever it is.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's our
Because
goal.
myself, I have a McDonald's down the road from me. I feel like, sending them a bill for picking up after, It's unfortunate that people litter, obviously, and even the roads that I clean up, they're the heavily traveled ones, and then 2 months later, it's back, so it's really, and tires, they're hard to get rid of. I have problems with people throwing tires and things into my dumpsters, which is, gosh almighty. But anyway, I'm very supportive. I love the fact that you're focusing on that and identifying it. How about foundations? Foundations aren't interested in supporting you, or?
So that's one of our challenges.
Yeah,
So the neighborhood of focus will inevitably bear some of the decision making on which neighborhood we're going to will be a function of where to Cleanways or PRC or somebody else at the
Right.
table have existing foundation support.
Right.
So that's how we're able to bring our resources to bear, is because we have that outside support that is not necessarily, it's not tied to the CPC,
Sure, right,
it's tied to our
right.
programs.
And whoever decided to fund you through trash citations, they need to be fired, I guess. Or either that or we need to get some trash police, so. It didn't turn out to be a very good funding source, did it?
It's a policy question, and I think that, as Councilwoman Strasburger points out, if it's tied up in the magistrate courts and just seeing that process through, we've done the analysis with Missy's help on what does it take to see a citation and result in an actual fine paid. And it's 7 layers of steps, and 9 times out of 10, the preference is, let's not go through all of that red tape, frankly. Let's get that person to commit to volunteering some community service to clean up the mess rather than collecting the $350 fine, which is going to get broken up and split across 3 different programs before it yields 48 cents to the CPC, right? So I think it's a fine idea, right? The premise is there and it makes sense, but the mechanisms were maybe not understood at the time that decision was made.
Well, that's great. Thanks for what you do. I really would love to talk at a broader scale as far as this Greenway. And I think if I walked you through it, you'd see it's not a matter of, I don't care how many bodies we got there. It's a couple months,
You would be surprised. And
Is that right?
again,
Yeah.
some of Myrna's cleanups and Cleanways' cleanups, they are multiple month endeavors.
Or
Right.
years.
Yeah. Yes. This I would think would be, I mean, it's deep, way in there.
And that's the challenge for us, is to keep our organizations healthy and our employees, paid and well-fed, and also to tackle these really,
Right. And you have to carry
seemingly
insurance on all the
insurmountable-
volunteers. You have to carry insurance on them?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. But items like washers and dryers that are thrown over hills that are in the middle of a greenway,
It sometimes makes you wonder, doesn't it?
We need a piece of equipment, I gotta tell you. I'll show you, someday, hopefully we get the chance.
We'd love to, yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, anyone in the first round? Seeing none, we'll go to the second round, starting with Ms. Harris.
Hey, I forgot to ask you about, do you bring the interns on from the different colleges to help you? And do you do any work on vines? I've been asking this question probably for the last 12 years. And if we had help with the vines, we wouldn't have had so many landslides because they keep dropping trees. And I keep telling the tree huggers, you have to hug the trees that are holding the hillsides up. So I just wondered if anybody could speak on anybody in your group working on the actual vines, because if you don't get the vines, they're taking down the trees, and that started happen.
Like we did in Portia with the goats.
Well, there are two different questions. One is about interns, and we definitely have used interns to help with the commission. Second one, about vines, as an organization, we have worked on that, primarily working with Tree Pittsburgh and the Parks Conservancy. We were part of the Parks Conservancy's program called the Urban Eco Stewards, with the idea that, just as you mentioned, that many of the dump sites also have larger environmental issues associated with them, such as landslides, such as invasive species. And so the idea was to have stewards, after we cleaned it up, have stewards working on some of those issues. And we do, actually. I think some of the early stewards were in the West End that may still be working on some of those stuff.
Like
Yeah,
pioneers over there.
yeah. So we have done a little bit, but honestly, as a Clean Pittsburgh Commission, that's not part of our mission.
As 279 was built on both sides going on, you can actually see when everything starts getting green. They're choking the trees out, the trees are dropping, and the hillsides are sliding, which cost the city even more. And you answered my question about you do work on the trails, because I don't know how we get the garbage on the trails that are there, but there is an awful lot of garbage.
And I would be happy to talk, and probably maybe it sounds like it might be good for me to start meeting again with each individual council person and talk to you and answer some of your specific questions about dumping and litter in particular. I think I got us off track a little bit by focusing more on
both.
but the commission in general.
If you want to see a beautiful hillside, you want all of that gone, not just the dirt. And did you get any money from the city this year?
The CPC has not received any funding. I don't know that in its history it's ever formally received any direct funding. The two organizations have received CDBG money, as we've mentioned, pretty consistently over the years, that we've used that CDBG money to reinforce our work in the commission. That's an elective decision that I think we as two organizations made at the outset of this. That, that's an appropriate use of that money is to support the work of the CPC, and it's enabled us to do all the great things that CPC has done. But beyond that, I am not aware of any contributions to CPC.
Okay.
The CDBG money, just to clarify too, the CDBG money has, for our organization, has enhanced the work we've been able to do. It has not really funded completely the work we've been able to do in the communities, because we've been working already in Homewood, for instance, for about a year, and so that takes more than generally what we get from the CDBG. So it helps for sure. This particular year, my understanding is a lot of the CDBG funding was cut back. Ours certainly was.
It was actually increased.
Oh, okay. Well, our particular funding was cut back.
We did?
This is, in my 5 years with PRC, this is the lowest year we've had with
Ours
CDBG
as well.
support.
Okay, because
It's increased by 2
I know I always donate to Allegheny Cleanways, but I think there should be a spot in a budget, if we truly care about having a cleaner city, and we have all these organizations, we have to give them some tools to be able to do the work. So I can't believe the mayor didn't put any money in this year. So we ought to look over the budget and see if there's, I mean, even if it's a small amount this year, but I think we could find more than a small amount, because they want to work on all of our districts. And who's this under? Corey? Yeah. You can look for the funding with.
The north side.
No. I mean, there's citywide projects. There's citywide projects, and there's
sure I can
money
find
that.
If everybody wants to vote for it, that's fine.
No, serious. Let's be serious.
I am being serious.
Okay. We should look for it. I know Councilwoman Smith was just saying the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
So maybe some of us that would like to help you out a little bit more can get a little spot in the budget and keep you there.
Councilwoman Smith.
So I'm going to just go back and say I agree with Councilwoman Harris on this. There's a lot that I want to say. I think that when we talk about what we're here for, it's to provide the basic services. And our Anthony Coghill ran his entire campaign on back to basics and won. So obviously there's something that the constituents want to see. They want to see us focus on the core values and the core services that we're supposed to provide in the city of Pittsburgh. And certainly trash and clean streets, safe streets, are some of those things that people want to see. So I would absolutely think that we should put something in the budget for this. I'd love to see, and I think that the foundations definitely have a role, and the private funders definitely have a role, maybe buying the ATV that you want to see, but to sustain the service, to actually have this service in the city of Pittsburgh, this should come from tax dollars. This is what tax dollars are for. They're for providing clean, safe streets. And the services that our residents want, the trash pickup, the things that we're doing with our in our environmental service department. So I absolutely agree we should find some room in the budget, and if delivering core services is something we value and we value what our residents are saying, then we'll make sure this is a priority in the budget. And we can make jokes and say that we want to, see, where we're going to get the funding and what are we going to cut out of the budget and on and on. But we find money for every other thing that's important to us. And, Reverend says all the time, our budget reflects our priorities. And to me, this is, and to our residents, more importantly, this is a priority. People are sick of seeing trash, and it's becoming a public safety concern with the hillsides, sliding, the landslides. It's becoming more costly in other ways. So you're going to pay one way or another through tax dollars, because these dollars to clean up the hillsides and the flooding are also tax dollars, whether they come from the city level, county level, or state level, or federal level. They're coming from somewhere to clean up these landslides. So do it on the front end, avoid all these landslides, avoid the flooding, and it'll be less costly in the long run to actually put it in the budget on the front end. And so I think this is a priority, and I think it's something we should all talk about. Since I've been here, we have been talking about quality of life issues and doing things, and it's something that the Women's Caucus has been focused on. It's something I think all of my colleagues have been focused on. That's what we're here for. So this is some of the things I think that we should be doing and working on together. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Bob O'Connor. I know that Councilman Coghill mentioned him, but a lot of this started with with Bob O'Connor and his, mentality of just get it done. And, sometimes you really appreciate that when you're struggling to get something done, struggling to get a house cleaned up, struggling to get a hillside cleaned up, struggling to get a tree cut down. You appreciate that mentality of just do it, just get it done. So I want to acknowledge Mayor O'Connor and Corey's dad for all his work, and the Bob Award is actually named after him that you have. So it's good to see that he's still honored in some way. But I do want to say, I do think that the foundations in the corporate America, they have a place in this, but it's not to provide our core functions. I mean, I have an extreme growing concern of the foundation community and the corporations and the private funding controlling what should be controlled by public dollars. And we're here for the public, and they pay taxes for these services, and I just want to make sure that we're doing what we have to do to provide those services out of their dollars.
There's a motion to approve on the table. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed is nay. Thank you very much for your hard work and your participation here on council. That takes us to the next bill, please.
Bill 1402, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Office of Management and Budget to enter into a corporation agreement with the Alliance for Infants and Toddlers for the shared operation and administration of the City of Pittsburgh City Child Care Quality Fund for a period of 2 years from the opening of the fund in an amount not to exceed $2 million and for the payment of the cost thereof.
Need it? Need a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Carter.
Thank you. I'm going to give a little bit of background, but Tiffany, if you wouldn't mind coming up. So this is $2 million. This is not a new program. I think to the general public, when they saw the announcement that there was a new program, this is not. This is $2 million that most of us were here on council voted for. I know that the Women's Caucus was very supportive of this when then Councilwoman Rudiak was here. But I want to thank all council members. This is money that will be spent on childcare throughout the city. This money is going to be spent on capital improvements to childcare so that we can open up more slots, obviously in areas that can't afford capital to do these improvements, so we can get more kids across the city into early child care facilities. There is a process here. I know Tiffany does have handouts for council members to explain the process, and it's going to be going through an agreement with Alliance for Infants and Toddlers, as well as working with the county who will help us disperse the funds. All funds have to be spent on city facilities. I also am requesting, I talked to Councilwoman Gross briefly the other day, I know Councilwoman Smith as well, that the city receives quarterly reports of where the money is going and how many slots have been expanded based on these funds that we dedicated a couple years ago. So just want to clarify, the council already made this a priority a couple years ago. Now this is to the point of dispersing it. Tiffany, if you want to add anything to it, and then I'll open it up to council colleagues. I'm good.
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. I'm Tiffany Semino, and I work in the mayor's office. I serve as the early childhood manager, so I work with child care facilities across the city, and want to thank everyone who's been at the table, who's really supported early child care and learning over the last several years. And this would be a funding that would allow existing child care facilities to improve their programming. So currently in the city, we see 18.1% of our child care facilities are considered high quality using the state quality standard Keystone Stars, which means that the teachers have degrees, that they're following a curriculum, that the materials and the programming is really enriching. So not only are we taking care of children, but we're getting them ready, all the skills that they'll need social, emotionally, physically, mentally, to be successful in school, as well as to have successful care for children while their parents are working. We look at across the city, and I have passed out to each of you, you'll be able to see the actual quality in each of your districts. There's papers coming around for that. We see beginning of childcare in terms of quality. Keystone Star 1, no stars, and Keystone Star 1 is kind of beginning in quality. And we have 75%.
I hate to interrupt you, but you've given us different
Oh, that's
papers.
the next one. Yep. Here, let me go
Okay.
get it. That one's not.
I ended up with yours.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so we're just trying to figure out what's
Okay,
what here.
no problem. Yeah, so they're all numbered by district. I didn't.
Do you have these for Reverend in the clerk's
Number by
office?
district.
And I can make one to send over.
Okay, I apologize.
Oh,
I
that's
just
okay.
want to make sure we're all
these are
looking
the
at the
ones
same
that
things
you
that you're talking about.
Yeah, so in each of your district, you'll see a list of all the child care facilities, their capacity, the programs they participate in, and their current quality levels. At the end, you'll be able to see break down what the quality looks like across your district. And the goal really is to make sure that we have more children in high-quality facilities, and we're able to support those businesses and being able to provide high-quality early learning and care. As they move up in the state quality system, they are able to, and you'll see the financial benefit sheet will tell you kind of the impact that it would have moving up in quality for those facilities that serve children with the child care subsidy from the state. They are eligible for increased wages or increased add-on rates, which is the money that comes from the state, which they could use then to help their facilities in terms of paying better wages and benefits, being able to stabilize their businesses.
Just, sorry,
Sure
I
thing.
thought I didn't have any more questions. So can you just explain to maybe the general public star
Sure.
1 and star 4?
Yeah.
How do you get there?
Sure thing.
What's some of the background to that?
Sure thing. So up until about a year and a half ago, Keystone Stars was an optional program. So as a child care provider, you could opt in. That's no longer the case. Any child care facility that's legally able to operate, so they have their child care certificate from Department of Human Services at the state level, is automatically a Keystone Star 1. Facilities that have a provisional license will be listed as no star. So those are kind of the beginning. So we know that those facilities are safe, that people have clearances that are working there, there's no chipping lead paint, those sorts of things. So it's just basically safety and that sort of thing. Star 2 would be kind of the beginning of quality. So you meet all the requirements of Star 1, but you're also looking at your staff have certain levels of professional development. You have X number of staff in your facility that have degrees in early childhood or education. You're offering some basic levels of benefits for your staff. Star 3 and 4 are really the high quality sites. So those are the centers where 75–80% of their child care providers have a certificate or degree. They are providing different kinds of benefits. So that could be, health insurance, a child care benefit. They're following a state standardized curriculum. They are doing child assessments on an ongoing basis. So we know that those are safe facilities, but they're also giving kids all the skills that they'll need to be successful in kindergarten and beyond.
And I just want to thank you for your work on this. I know
thank you.
You and I have been pushing to get this money out for quite some time. I have no further questions.
Ms. Harris?
Yes, I have a few questions. You're on the 4th floor.
I'm sorry?
Is it the 4th floor? Or
I'm on the 5th floor. I'm within the
Fifth
mayor's
floor.
office.
Okay. So the people that are working with the children
Yes.
have clearances, but the people that also work around in other offices also could come in that room.
Within a child care facility?
The facility here.
Oh, so our child care that we provide through Flexible does not, because it's considered drop-in care, it doesn't have to follow all of the state requirements in terms of a child care facility. So the child care facility has different regulations.
I would think that I would want to have, even in this building, a child care facility with people that surround the children, that could have access to the children, or that work with your children, have their Act 33 and 34. Because you never know, and the school district was sued once for a setting that's similar to what you're doing in the mayor's office right now. And anything that could happen to a child would last a lifetime. So I think that needs to be looked at. And if you're also dealing with children, I would think they should be on the 1st floor somewhere to try to find a space there.
We have been holding our child care sessions on the 1st floor within the finance office, so they have an extra kind of conference room space.
And get sprinklers in those rooms. I think within any child care facility, they have to have the sprinklers. And I don't think the city of Pittsburgh should be any different, or any of these should be any different than what the safety needs to be, the level of safety for those children. I mean, I think you're on the 4th floor at first.
Yeah, we've tried a few different conference rooms, and we've settled on the 1st floor as a good location.
It still really concerns me. And all you got to do is turn your back once, and those people are waiting. And they look just like all of us at the table here. Could be anybody. And that would hurt a child for life. So the safety, as far as being able to get them out in an emergency with any children, there should be sprinklers. And if we have children in this building, they should really be on the 4th floor to have that exit to get out and the sprinkler system even down there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Smith?
So, I actually, first of all, thank you for your work.
Sure thing.
And again, I'm going to point out that this was also started by the Women's Caucus, this whole initiative, and supported by our male colleagues, and who are always great and always supportive of everything we're trying to do. And so we appreciate them as well. But I want to say that a lot of this came about because Councilwoman Gross held out her vote on some other issues, and I don't know if you want to talk about it, to make sure that this was a priority. And she and Reverend Burgess have been real champions in housing and in early pre-K and summer youth employment, things like that. That I just really I really think that are really helping our young people in the city of Pittsburgh. I want to acknowledge their work, but I want to acknowledge your work and thank you for all this. And this chart that you gave us, it's actually startling to see the number one star or star one, level one, childcare facilities in my district, and there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 that are listed as 3 or 4.
Yeah,
So,
you'll see there's a little breakdown on the bottom there.
yeah, I mean, it's shocking. And so is this public knowledge? I mean, does the public have access to this so they know where they're putting their children?
I think they do. I think the challenge is, before I came to work for the city, I was a child care center director in the north side, and I would often have families that would come in that would want to sign up.
My kids are looking for something.
Then the wait lists are so long. So I can tell you on many occasions, we had parents that would come in, sometimes expectant parents that didn't need care for 6, 8 more months, and having to say, unfortunately, that classroom is full and we have a wait list. And having those parents say, either I'm not going to go back to work, or I'm going to have to put my child in a facility that I don't agree with, or I don't feel as safe, or I don't feel as enriching. So that's a challenge, especially for our families that have child care subsidy, our lowest income families, that the challenge that they have to face every day. So this is why the fund is so important, because we're giving those tools to child care facilities so that they can move up in quality, so that we're able to provide more quality seats within the city.
So I just want to say so this is concerning to me, obviously, but it's also concerning to me that we give people the false impression that 4-star is absolutely safe and secure all the time too. People have a responsibility to look out for their children, where they're leaving their children when they're leaving, especially when they're leaving them alone with anyone, including family, because most of the time when a child is molested, they're molested by somebody within their own family or their own circle in some way. So you have a responsibility to still check on them, still show up unannounced, still see what's going on with your child. And if your child's, there may be warning signs, maybe you can talk about that. I don't know if I'm going to put you on the spot, but that you can make sure that your child is in a quality place. Don't mistake somebody else's rating and somebody else's numbers or statistics for something that's good for your child. Not everyone is safe. Not every place is great, regardless of the rating. You have to know what's best for your child and what's going on in your child's life.
Sure thing.
It's scary. Can I just say, it's really scary now to be a parent, because you have to worry about so many things. I worry every day about, my own family, my own grandchildren, and when I think about having to leave somebody in childcare and the care of somebody who you don't know, or the place that you don't know, it's terrifying for people. And to me, I want to make sure we have the best, but I want to make sure that we also tell people that you still have your part to do too. You still have a responsibility. Who you let in your home, whether it's a boyfriend or a friend, and you're leaving that you have no other options, you still have to be responsible and try to make sure that it's a safe environment. I think most kids would rather be homeless than to be abused. So I just want to say that. And so a lot of times I think it comes down to some of that, unfortunate. But I'm going to let you respond, then I want to ask you make some other
So I would
comments.
just encourage families that are looking for childcare. There is a website called Compass. You can just Google Pennsylvania Child Care Compass, and you can actually look at every registered child care facility, and you can look at their certification history. So child care facilities are required to be inspected once a year. They give you a month long. So during that month, the inspector could show up at any point. They will actually go through. They also do a certain number of drop-in kind of on-the-spot visits. I believe it's 10% of their caseload. So you can actually go in if you're interested in a child care facility. Whether it's a star 1, 2, 3, 4, you can go in and look at that, and you can see the actual results from the inspector that has gone in and visited.
So I want to say one of the things that bothered me is I'm going to be honest, my nephew attended a high quality childcare. His mother is extremely bright and knows this area inside and out. And I will just say, and she was one of those people that would pop in and see what was going on. Yet it was years later that we found out there was somebody in that facility arrested for child molestation. And so I just want to say, those stars, those ratings, anything you're reading on a website does not replace your responsibility of getting out there and getting in there to see what's going on. It just doesn't negate your responsibility as a parent. And we have to look out for our kids. And it's a hard thing because you're choosing between your livelihood and your safety. And I mean, it's a hard time for parents. So I want to make sure we're providing and one of the things I want to say is that, and I talked to Councilman O'Connor about this, is I wonder how much we would be better off opening up our own resource centers in the city of Pittsburgh, one north, south, east, west, and central that provides free quality childcare. And Maine, they have, it's called community-based daycare, where it's free. It's free to the families, but it's quality, and they make sure that, and it's ran by them. And so I think it would be great if we could look into some of those things and see if those are some of the things that we would like to be offering, and to make sure, I mean, we talk about technology, it'd be great to have the cameras there so people can check in on their children at any time of the day to see what's going on in their child care facility. And I wonder if some of that funding would, $2 million could pay for some of those centers. I wonder if it's better off being spent in that way than in this regard. I wonder where we're going to see the most results. But I also want to thank the administration for working on this and putting this money forward, because, I had heard, it would take so long. And I said to somebody, this is quick according to government standards. I don't know what you're talking about. I think that, I said, and I'm sure that they wanted to make sure that they were putting it in the right place and putting the right partners in place. But I do want to ask about the foundation that's going to be the conduit for the funding.
Oh, yes.
How was that determined, and why is the county involved at all? Because if this is a city, I think I need to just understand that, because I think those are questions that we all have.
So we are looking to put the funding into, it's called the Early Learning Resource Model, and it's a new statewide model that will be, it's kind of a hub and spoke model where it's for parents. So parents can stop in, they can sign up for childcare, they can get a child assessment, they can hear about early learning opportunities for their child, as well as for the child care providers. They'll get professional development there, support. So this is something they could walk them through the grants process, help them look at their programs and see what the best investments would be. And that went out through an RFP throughout the state. And locally, the 3 partners that are leading the Early Learning Resource Center here will be Department of Human Services, Trying Together, and the Alliance for Infants and Toddlers. And the Alliance for Infants and Toddlers provides early intervention services for children 0 to 3 right now throughout the county. They also are serving as the fiscal sponsor from the money that's coming from the state. So they're handling all of the money and payments that will go to providers. They're also handling the CCIS, the child care subsidy. They'll be the ones that are getting that money from the state and sending it out as reimbursements for the child care providers.
So do you have a copy of the RFPs? Can we see those?
Sure, I can send those
I'd like
over
to see those, and the responses. I'd like to see
Sure.
those. The other thing, I'd like to say is that I'm curious why Pittsburgh Public Schools is not involved in it at all, because this is one of their, to me, this is one of their functions. And I'd like to know if they're allocating funding to this, or how are they participating?
Sure. So they are not participating in terms of, I believe they'll use some of the Early Learning Resource Center money, but they are.
Of course they will.
Well, I mean, I don't think they'll tap into our funding quite as much, but I mean, I think they'll be using some of the services that the Early Learning Resource Centers have for the child care providers in the community. But what the Pittsburgh Public Schools is going to be able to do is, once we are moving those facilities up to Star 3 and 4 status, they'll be able to then get additional slots from the state. So right now, this year, there was an increase in pre-K counts, which is the state pre-K program, which is for families that are a little higher income, so 300% of the poverty limit. And right now, what they're saying is there's as a region in Pittsburgh, we likely can't take on too many additional slots, especially in our community-based childcare facilities, because those high-quality facilities are already sort of maxed out in their classroom space. So as we move more facilities up in quality, they're going to be able to tap into some of the money that's available at the state level.
I want to say I think that one of the things Pittsburgh Public Schools does well, and I don't say this lightly, is pre-K.
They do.
And I think that it would be really good to see them extend this a little bit, and to really see them involved and allocate. They have a bigger budget than we have. It'd be good to see them step up to the plate a little bit in this area. And I hope that you're having those conversations with them, because I think this is like as I said, I mean, there's areas where I definitely think they struggle. Pre-K is not one of them. I think they do. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, as from what I've seen, I think they do pretty well in that area. But I do think that we need to have a conversation about what is the best way we can maximize and the money, and to make sure that we're getting the best results for our families. I think it's a terrible time to have to worry. You have to almost pick between childcare, quality childcare, and even poor childcare at this point, and working, because it doesn't pay families to go to work and put their children in a daycare. And when you look at some of the daycares, they're not quality daycares. I mean, as you just gave us a list, we know. And so I think it's just a really difficult time for families right now. And you're really struggling between working and providing child care or the basic necessities for your family. I think we need to do better. And I think $2 million is great, but at last I checked, it was over $70 million to actually really do this program. So I don't know that we're just not putting something in place and really almost wasting the money, because we're not going to see real results. Or the school district has more money than we do, and they have a bigger surplus than we have. So if it's a priority to them, hopefully they'll step up to the plate. So anyway, so what I'd like to see is for us to have a better, broader conversation. I think this came about when it was the thing to talk about, early pre-K, and and it still is the thing to talk about. But, I don't usually jump on the bandwagon of national politics and what everybody else wants to talk about. I want to actually yield results for our residents. And to me, I think we need to have a better conversation. And is this where our money is best spent, and how we can make sure that our kids are doing great in the city of Pittsburgh? And are there better partnerships that we should be talking about, and people that we should be talking to that we have not yet done? So that's just it for me. I think it's a conversation we have to have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gross.
Thank you. I'm going to also remind council that, Councilwoman Smith, I pulled out my notes, and it was October of 2014 when I have my first handwritten notes about creating a child care fund. And we were able to get only $250,000 in the 2015 budget, so like December of 2014 maybe. We got the first $250,000 and created this budget line, and created that first capacity study, which I want to ask you about in a minute. So we commissioned, it was $15,000 to commission with what is now Trying Together to study and see how many child care facilities there were, and some of the numbers that we have in front of us today. And then we also created a small task force that talked to our own city departments to make sure that we weren't being an obstacle to improving child care quality, and starting and running a child care business with the fire chief and PLI inspections and zoning, and we smoothed out some of those things to make sure that we just weren't being a bad partner. And then talked about how we could be a better partner, like creating safe paths, journey to school, journey to pre-K. And then also I specifically remember a child care facility that needed us to not only provide crosswalks, but clean up a city park so that it could get a higher quality ranking. You really need to take the kids outside. And if you're an urban center, you may not have that space on your site. And so were unable to walk the kids safely to the nearest city park, and then the city park was unsafe, right, with drug needles, and et cetera. So we worked with DPW to make sure that we got that kind of the pedestrian safe crossing, as well as clean up and maintain the park, so it was a place that kids could play. And so those are kind of things that I think are also on our shoulders to do. And then the fourth thing we did that year was to create Tiffany's position. And so are you full-time now? Because
I am, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Because I think the first year we were only able to fund
No,
it.
I've been
It was
full-time the whole
full-time.
time.
It was another position then that was half-time. Or maybe we just struggled and found the budget dollars for that. So the genesis was in 2014. And it was Councilwoman Rudiak, Councilwoman Smith, Councilwoman Harris, and I sitting in a room. And like I said, the earliest notes that I actually have kept were October of 2014. When we kind of said, okay, what are all the actionable things we can do? And then in my recollection, we were able to put the $2 million in addition to the $250,000 into the same budget line in December of 2017. And so now it's taken a year to do this programming. I don't have that initial 2015 study of capacity in front of me, and I didn't refresh my numbers. And we each have only our district's numbers in front of us. We've been kind of comparing notes. How many 4 stars do you have? How many 1 stars do you have? Can you, off the top of your head, if you can, if not, we can follow up. How are we doing? It's 2019 now. How do these numbers compare to our first benchmarking study that Women on Council
Sure.
funded?
So they have gone up a little bit.
Great.
The big challenge was there was a total change of Keystone Stars.
Right.
So there was an
those,
adjustment.
not exact apples
yeah,
to
so it's
apples.
kind of not apples to apples, but we have, and the new system is a little more responsive. So it was kind of a block system where you had to meet every single thing. And when I was a director, I went through that system, and it was like you had to have a specific statement in your handbook. You had to do, you had to have a yearly audit, which for some programs, they're so small that, that was a huge issue for them in terms of financially being able to afford that. So they have changed it. So Star 1 and Star 2, you have to meet all of the requirements, and Star 3 and Star 4 are points-based. So you look and you say, hey, I want to focus my program on students that are English language
That's okay. We don't need the
learners.
details,
Yeah.
but in general, my question was, you're seeing actually more seats?
So we are
or
seeing
more facilities?
We're seeing both. So
Okay.
we are seeing it's a small improvement because again, the big challenge is folks don't have the financial means to actually, put up a new fence, purchase the materials. But we have seen some programs that have been able to move up.
And those were part of our early conversation. So just for a little bit of the audience here, one of the things I'm happy to see here is one that I advocated for, again, back in 2014 and 2015, because in the 1990s, I was working with a program that was had a child care fund in North Carolina, and it was a statewide goal to increase both the quantity and quality of child care facilities. And that's what I learned. I was the one doing the intake from the facilities on the phone, and I think you know this story. But it was often, hey, I can't take on more kids unless I have this stainless steel hand washing sink, or I'm able to fence in the yard so I can let them outside, or I can add, another bathroom, or secure my sidewalk or railing or whatever it is. And so these capital funds are critical into increasing the capacity of centers. One of the things that is different from the program I worked on 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago now, versus to this one that we have in front of us, is that the one I worked with in North Carolina was a revolving loan fund. So we had state money, we had a little county money, and we had the local money that we were able to put together. So it didn't matter if you were looking for $500 for your fence, or 5,000 or 50,000 because you were a large center. But when you paid that money back, it was able to go out to the next center. And so I want to, I've been advocating that, and we've been in these discussions, you and I, many times. But the proposal we have in front of us is only for grants, and I wanted to let you speak to that a little bit.
Sure thing. So I do speak directly with lots of childcare providers, and when I talk to them about would you use a grant versus a loan fund, of course the grant fund is preferable.
Everyone's going to,
but
vote for money they don't have to take back.
But the facilities that serve the lowest income children, just because they're moving up in quality, they may be getting additional funding in the door, but there are requirements in terms of the number of staff that you have to have with degrees, the amount of different kinds of benefits you have to offer them. So, folks that I speak to say that it would be a hardship, and I think what we would see is that people would take the grant and perhaps not be able to pay that back. And back to that 2015 study, I did look at this area, which is, we have 81 up to 83% of providers would tap into a grant fund versus around 40% for a loan fund. So I think the interest might not be there in terms of being able to pay that funding back. And then we're also seeing, just because you're providing a high level of care doesn't mean you have additional dollars that are coming in on your bottom line. You're putting those out in your program.
But then they're gone.
Then they are gone. But
then we'll have zero in our child care fund.
We have had some conversations with foundations, and I've seen in other cities that once you're able to show the impact of what's happening locally, there are a lot of foundations that are already giving out funding to early childhood facilities. They're paying for a playground, they're paying for improvements that are needed for STARS. And could we, as a city, show that we've made such an impact that they would be willing to put those funds into a consolidated pot? So maybe as a city, we allocate a small amount of money every year, and then we have different foundations that are putting that funding in.
So again, I think we're talking about trying to achieve this same goal. The Women on Council, I think, first envisioned this. I envisioned it originally as a loan fund. I am grateful that we're going to be calling attention to this matter, that we funded your position, that we've hopefully already, by working on the issue and bringing in convening partners, helped these businesses succeed and expand. I would like to also see some new startups, which I'm not sure that this money is going for.
This would be for existing child care facilities?
Only existing. We know that we need new ones as well.
We do.
So I'm not going to let up. I am supportive today, but I see that there's a monthly report, because we don't want to spend $2 million of public money, of taxes money, right, to money that's going to evaporate and not have impact. Yep. So we really want to monitor impact here. As we know, we all can see the same problem. We're testing out this solution. I'm going to push back a little bit. I know, of course, if you're operating a facility, you're going to say like, oh no, give me the money, I don't have to pay back, and I'll make good use of it. But I saw loans paid back and result in more seats created and higher quality created in existing structures. And other states have provided this model repeatedly. So I'm supportive today, but I think we want to also really not take off our attention in creating maybe even a mix. Mm-hmm. We know that the URA, in creating, for example, mortgages that people could afford, basically blended mortgages with mortgages you ever had to pay back, right? So there might be part of your mortgage that you had to pay back, and maybe there was a small percentage, like another extra 10%, that if you stayed in the house 5 years, you didn't have to pay back. That might be a kind of model we can use here. The goal is, we know how hard it is to keep refunding pots of money. And so we want to create something that can continue to do the work. And I believe that that's possible. So I'm going to keep talking about it. And I'm eager to see these improvements that we all want to see. And I'm hoping that this does part of that work. But I think there's, as Councilwoman Smith said, there may be a $70 million program out there. And instead of $2 million working this 3 to 5 years and then working out again, so it's $4 million of impact, and then working out again, so it's $6 million of impact. I'm afraid with this program, we're going to see the $2 million of impact, and then we'll have zero. Right. So we'll keep talking. I know this has been a lot of work to get to this point today.
Thank you.
So I do, yes, I thank you. Thank you for all of this work that you have in front of us, and we're eager to see your work.
Talk to you.
It doesn't need to be a brick and mortar place. It looks like I have some residential daycare.
Yes, some
is
of
that
those
right?
are home-based
Yeah.
child
Okay,
care
so
facilities, which is good.
okay, and so if say a 6, child operation working out of the residential home, their washer and dryer breaks, and you really need that in order to function. Would they be able to turn to this for?
Yes,
for
we
the
could
grant?
look
Yeah.
at the things that are required. So
Right.
yes, laundering is
Yeah,
required.
right.
If there's plumbing issues in the area, they have their child care facility.
Even though they'll use it for their own personal laundry as well, right? We don't
Well, I
we don't-
think, we could look at the cost allocation of that.
I was surprised how little I had in my neighborhood and compared to Mr. Lavelle's I was looking at. He's got a lot of kids. I don't know, do we just not like kids in the 4th district or?
Well, I think you'll look at each of the districts have different types of child. So, you may have more informal or family-based childcare that's happening in your district, or more kind of other relatives that can kind of chip in. But it is a need in your district, and sometimes, sometimes they may live in your district, but they're traveling downtown, so they use Mr.
Yeah, I have one Green Star, and they're fantastic. I toured the place.
yep.
They really work.
Seton
Seton Center.
Center?
Yeah,
They're
they're
wonderful.
fantastic. So the others I'm really not
Let me just
familiar
say,
with.
My brother helped start the Seton Center.
I know. You told me that once before. Yeah, that's great. And, the other thing is I agree with Councilwoman Gross. I mean, so the $2 million, once it's gone, it's gone. Then what? Then we're starting from scratch? Or is this something we're just going to divvy out and not expect a return? And are we going to be coming back to the table for $2 more million in the next year's budget?
Well, I think we could explore all of that. I think
Yes.
once these facilities are able to move up, they are able to then maintain. So, if you look at like a Seton Center, they have everything that they need, and they may need just a little bit of operating. Maybe they need to purchase new toys. So they don't need 50,000. They may need 10,000 or something like that.
Yeah,
So,
but you figure, so 2 years we divvy out
Yep.
the $2 million, and then 3 years, 4 years from now, they're going to have new needs, or new operations are going to have their needs, and we're not going to have a pot of money, which it's everybody wants something for free. That's I don't blame them. I would too if I were in that business, but it seems like to sustain it, you almost have to do it on a loan type of, or a zero interest loan, or subject to each, I guess, case.
and I think if we are able to show that we have strong outcomes, that we're really making a dent by supporting these child care providers, I believe that we can bring along some of our philanthropic funders and some of our larger nonprofits and other types of folks who may be interested in kind of, contributing to that fund in the future. But that's why we definitely, as we look at awarding funding, we want to make sure it's really strictly attached to the child care certification guidelines and then the STAR standards. So we're making sure that every purchase is really strategic, with the goal of making sure that kids are in high quality, safe facilities.
So you're not funded by foundations now?
No, not at this point.
Right. But you, in the future, look at that as a possibility?
And we've seen that work in other states and other cities, yes.
Okay, great. I'm done. Yeah.
All right, we have a motion to approve on the table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and Councilwoman Harris registered aye vote before she left. Thank you very much for your work and your participation. We have 2 more bills on the agenda. We ask they be read together.
Bill 1403, resolution adopting plan revision to the City of Pittsburgh official sewer facilities plan for UPMC Mercy Vision and Rehabilitation Hospital at UPMC Mercy. Bill number 1404, resolution adopting plan revision to the City of Pittsburgh's official sewer facilities plan for proposed Grace Street residents at the intersection of Grace Street and Man Street.
Need a motion, Mr. O'Connor.
Motion approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any conversation?
I want to just thank Councilman O'Connor. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I would just say I talked to both members. They're supportive of these projects.
Any other conversation? Ms. Gross?
I see that one of the sewer facilities plans is the one you just read for Mercy Hospital. UPMC Mercy, is that the one you just read?
Yes.
Okay, I'll abstain on this vote, thank you.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Abstentions?
On 1403.
Deb, abstention.
All right, so you abstain on both of them?
I abstained,
Okay, that's fine. Although, okay, we have 2 abstentions.
but you read them together, so, but if it's just 1403, I'll do that.
Just 1403,
Thank you.
so noted.
All right, any other conversation? All right, the motion has been approved. That takes us now to motions and resolutions. Anything for the good of the body? And at the end, I'll announce this public hearing and we'll be done. Ms. Smith?
I know everyone's eager to get out of here. It's been a long morning, but I just want to talk a little bit about the electricity that has been off across the city of Pittsburgh, and the water for PWSA and a good portion of my district. I want to acknowledge that Grant Gitlin and Dan Gilman have been doing an amazing job in the city of Pittsburgh, and so has our public safety folks. That I don't know if people realize, but they go door to door checking on our elderly, making sure they have things, and so they've been doing that in our area. I do want to say I'm extremely disappointed that it's taking this long. This was a significant storm, but and very close to like a tornado or something like that. The winds were very high. However, it has been 4 days, and I feel like the communication to the public has been very, very poor. I feel like the communication to the public in this area, and unfortunately, PwC has kept me informed, and they have been putting some things out, but residents are also getting frustrated right now because their water's been out since the break yesterday. But I want to say they have been very good at keeping us informed. I think the public needs to know a little bit more. I think that they're getting upset because it's been days without. It's been now days without water, days without electricity, and not a lot of communication coming out. And I went over to talk to Chief of Staff Gilman yesterday about my concerns and about the lack of communication, the lack of response. We have CERT teams trained in the city of Pittsburgh. It's certified emergency. It's community emergency.
Response?
Yeah, training something. It's the community people that are trained for emergencies to handle response teams for the emergency. I think it's community emergency response teams, and we should have had those folks out. Into the communities, letting people know if it was that serious that it was almost like a tornado or almost like a hurricane or whatever the wind it was described as, we should have had more of a response out from us, from the government. But I do want to thank Councilman Gilman. I talked with him a little bit, and he assured me that and showed me that our public safety folks have been out there and that they have been going door to door, making sure folks have their medication, making sure folks are receiving the services that they need. I think it was getting that message out to the residents that we needed to do. And so I did tell him that I'd like us to work on us having a better response plan for whatever happens, because we know that this summer we're already anticipating additional landslides, additional extreme rain, flooding, and whoever else knows what else is going to happen, because this weather has just been insane. So I think that we need to be prepared for whatever it is. Whether it's some of the things that we have going on in the city, I mean, even riots and other things that we have talked about before, protests and different things that people are talking about. I think we need to know how we're going to communicate to the public and where their safe place is and where they can expect to receive that information. That's what I think we need to do on our end. But on the other end, I really want to make sure that I think we're going to have a conversation with Duquesne Light about their response. I'd like to know how the neighborhoods were selected and how they responded. And when they talk about public safety and you see some of the areas, public safety and the amount of residents served, I think you have to consider that if it's public safety, some neighborhoods have a higher crime rate, and being in the dark for days is putting people at risk, significantly. And when I see some of the areas that have been, that are still waiting for service, it's getting me a little bit, it's making me question the response. And so I think we're going to have a public conversation with Duquesne Light and with PwC about the responses, and also internally about what we're going to do and how we're going to manage and handle these emergencies and situations that come up, whether we know what they're going to be or not. There's always going to be another one, and how we're handling it. And I think our public needs to know where to look for that information and what to expect from us. So,
Teresa, on that note, can I just say one thing? Lisa, who's a Mount Washington, resident, she has a boil water advisory.
Right.
What does that mean? Does that mean you can't drink it? Does that mean you can't bathe in it?
Can I just say that's
well, is it just drinking? I mean, so as far as like bathing in it and things like that.
So I think the problem was that came out, and it came out so late. It came out like when the businesses were getting ready to serve dinner. You know what I mean? And so it was trying to get that information out. And I do want to say that I really want to emphasize how much Dan Gilman and Grant Gitlin worked on all these things, and even PwC, I'm going to forget his name. No,
Rick Obermeyer.
The government relations.
Bill Pickering?
No. Jake Pollock had been in constant communication, and Will Pickering, he's always amazing, with us. So, I mean, I think that there's been great people working on it, but even as simple things as the residents were being told that the issue was isolated, that they isolated the problem and they were working on restoring service, which some, it's my understanding, some are still waiting. But when they'd call the emergency response line to see how much longer it would be, they said, well, the problem's not fixed. They would say the opposite of what was being sent out. So the messages weren't even in sync. So I think that that's important. I did talk to Jake, and he was going to correct that. I hope that he did. But to me, it's those kinds of things. We want to make sure we're in sync. People can trust what they're hearing, know what they're hearing. And then if we're going to give estimated times, if there's a delay or something that's going to happen, that we're honest about it and letting people know. But I think when people also need to understand when it comes to the storms, there were a lot of warnings about that storm coming and telling people to be prepared. Yet there were not a lot of people prepared. So I think we need to do some drills in the city of Pittsburgh. I think we need to do some training and in advance of any, before we come to the part that we're having an emergency and people don't know how to respond. We need to do some trainings and say, this is what to expect and this is what you do in an emergency. And this is how to pack an emergency kit. And if you're on medication, this is what you do. A lot of people that didn't know, I even got a call from a woman from Homewood. She said she called your office yesterday. She wants to help you. But she said that she didn't know that she was able to call 911 because she couldn't get her electricity was out and she didn't have her medication. But she was afraid to walk around the house because she was, it was so dark and she was afraid. And she said, but I survived. I did it without my medication. I'm like, oh my God, that's what you call 911 for. She goes, I didn't want to bother them. So I think people don't know what, an emergency is. If you can't get your medication, if it's life-threatening in any way or serious, I mean, that's 911. But I felt so bad for her because she's the sweetest woman in the world and, it's just that she didn't know. And so I think those are things we need to make sure we educate our public on and make sure we get out great information and better response.
That's right. Any other conversation? Any other conversation? I will announce next Wednesday, March 6th at 1:30, Council will hold a cablecast public hearing on Bill 2019-1353 as it relates to amending and supplementing the Pittsburgh Code by creating Title 13 Stormwater Management. I'll need a motion to excuse the absent member, approve the minutes, and adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposers, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for your patience.